coming to India, what does it mean? Now, a lot of our viewers are probably going to be interested in knowing whether it means an immediate increase in fuel retail prices, which is like the big uh, talking point in India. And the good news, at least on that front, is that that's unlikely to happen. And the reason it's unlikely to happen is that fuel prices went up. They were frozen at a certain level. Since then, oil prices have come down, but we've still not cut fuel prices because the government believes that the oil marketing companies, the big ones are all state-owned, should recover the losses they've made by trying to keep prices low.
Hello, we are back with HT Insight, and the topic we dissect today is of oil cartel OPEC Plus pledging to reduce output by 2 million barrels a day. I am joined by HT Editor-in-Chief Sukumar Ranganathan for more on this. But first, let me break it down for you, our viewers. What is OPEC Plus? Now, OPEC Plus is a group of some 23 oil exporting countries which meets regularly to decide how much crude oil to sell on the world market. Now, this group is led by Saudi Arabia and includes countries like Russia and other oil exporters. Now, what is the problem with their decision? Now, they have pledged to reduce output by $2 million a day. Now, if oil production is reduced, then supply of oil will be further reduced in the global economy, thereby increasing oil prices even further. Now, given the Ukraine war and the already existing embargoes on Russian oil, this will create a greater oil shortage, meaning there's a massive problem in store, not just for the European economy, but also for nations like India, which are dependent on oil exports. Let me bring in Sukumar at this point. Sukumar, I have tried to explain it simply to our viewers what the problem is, but I'd like you to explain the impact of this move by OPEC Plus at a time when perhaps maintaining a global supply of energy is of paramount importance.
I think you've done a very competent job of explaining the lay of the land. I just want to step back a little bit and explain the significance of this action, because there are two broad dimensions on which this action is significant. The first one, which is very critical, is the geopolitical aspect. While there were certain quarters that were expecting a reduction in supply by OPEC Plus, for many months now, there has been significant lobbying by the Americans, most notably demonstrated in the famous fist bump of US President Joe Biden with MBS, which were targeted at oil diplomacy, which was in turn aimed at ensuring that OPEC Plus did not do just what it did yesterday. The reason for this is because any cut in supply will work to the advantage of Russia. It will shore up oil prices, and there is a prevailing view, and it is an accurate view largely, that Russia is using some of the revenue it gets from oil to fund the war with Ukraine. And the war has already gone on for far longer than the West would like it to go on. So it is in their interest to make sure that it ends as soon as possible. And this just works completely at odds to the whole geopolitical pressure that they were trying to bring on Russia to end the war. There is, of course, an economic aspect of this also. And the economic aspect of this is higher energy prices at a time when, strangely enough, the world is staring at a recession. And normally a recession is accompanied by lower energy prices. Right. Typically, if you look at it historically, OPEC Plus has sought to, or of course OPEC, the previous version, has sought to react to recessions by cutting supply so that its prices stay at the same level or go up. So that is the economic impact of this, higher energy prices at a time when the world can ill afford higher energy prices. The third aspect, which I think is a derivative of the first, is that in many ways this shows the limits of America's power, because the US was most actively lobbying for OPEC Plus not to do what it did, which is a production cut, which is to do a supply cut. And it's bad news for the US, it's bad news for Europe, it's bad news for the rest of the world, and it will have economic implications that are going to cascade down, including in India.
Okay. You talked about the impact on India. Can you, I mean, before we go on the optics of this move by OPEC Plus, which includes the Saudi Arabia, where Biden just visited just a couple of months ago, and there is, of course, you talked about the hectic lobbying that's happening from the American side too, so that they don't come up with a move like this, but also which also includes Russia, which is really the global pariah right now. And with all the we talk about the optics, but you talked about the Indian impact on India of this move, this decision by the OPEC Plus. What's the likely impact on India?
Okay, before I comment on that, I just want to weigh in a little bit on Russia, which you brought in. This is a win for Russia. I mean, people may spin it in many different ways, but what OPEC Plus did yesterday was a clear and unequivocal win for Russia. Could not have asked for a better outcome. So people can try and spin it any which way they want, but this works exactly to Russia's advantage. Coming to India, what does it mean? Now, a lot of our viewers are probably going to be interested in knowing whether it means an immediate increase in fuel retail prices, which is like the big talking point in India. And the good news, at least on that front, is that that's unlikely to happen. And the reason it's unlikely to happen is that fuel prices went up. They were frozen at a certain level. Since then, oil prices have come down, but we've still not cut fuel prices because the government believes that the oil marketing companies, the big ones are all state-owned, should recover the losses they've made by trying to keep prices low when oil price went high. So the current level of pricing is likely to continue for quite some time. I don't see prices being increased sharply unless the oil price goes disproportionately high. And what do I mean by disproportionately high? I think around $105, there would be some panic that is setting in. So that is in the short term. So in the short term, retail fuel prices are not going to go up. But in the medium term, and even immediately, the government's budgetary math is obviously going to bear the brunt of this. Because if you look at the economic survey, it assumed oil price of $75 a barrel, I think. I think the budget was slightly more generous in terms of its assumption. It assumed around $85. It looked that we were nearing that level because oil prices really came down sharply. If you remember what happened after the Ukraine war broke out, oil prices first soared sharply, but since then declined about 32% till yesterday when they started climbing again, but it came down quite sharply. And it looked like the budgetary math would hold. I don't think we can say that anymore. I think that is going to see some, I mean, the government is going to have to react to it in some way. I don't know how it will choose to react to it, but obviously, you know, the reaction will have to be at two levels. At one level, we will have to use our diplomatic, whatever diplomatic leverage we have to try and see we can get better deals for oil with some of our new allies in West Asia, whether we can strike some better deals with Russia, and because that, for us, energy security is paramount. We can't compromise our energy security, especially at a time when the world is slowing down and the Indian economy is not doing as well as it was expected to do at the beginning of the year, but still,
but doing much
relatively
better
speaking,
than
in comparison to many of the other countries, is a rare bright spot in the global economic firmament. It's going to do quite well this year. So I think we will have to look for those deals, and we will also have to see what other things we can do to sort of mitigate the impact of this increase in oil price. Because if OPEC follows this up, and that is the real fear, right? I mean, not right now, but after some time follows it up a bit more, the oil price might reach a level at which it is really going to create a problem for India, even in terms of inflationary tendencies across a range of commodities. And for instance, one of the things that has happened because of the sharp increase in oil prices and fuel prices, energy prices this year, is what's happened to gas. Natural gas prices have risen very sharply, and as a result, gas-based fertilizer plants in India, and you know that the government subsidizes fertilizers, so the subsidy bill is going to go up as a result of that. So you will have to start factoring those in. But that's much more in the medium to long term. I think the short term impact, the consumer impact of people worrying about whether at midnight today is there going to be an increase in,
and that's the biggest worry, isn't it? Yeah.
Not going to happen right now, at least in my assessment.
Not going to. Oh, great. Not going to happen right now, but yes, as you're pointing out, that maybe in a medium term or a longer term that might play out, but depending on how whether or not we're able to strike the right deal.
Aditi, I have to come in here. See, the thing is, and I think the government is doing the right thing here, because the situation is so volatile, and oil prices energy prices have been so volatile, that I think you will have to take a considered call on this. There's no point in reacting every time a data point emerges.
Sure.
And I think we are going to continue to see that volatility for perhaps the rest of the year.
Right. So the White House has, of course, expectedly reacted to this move, expressed their disappointment, and but not only have they sharply criticized this decision by OPEC Plus, but also said that they will consult with Congress on additional tools and authority to sort of reduce OPEC's control over energy prices. Now, is that even likely? Is there a way that somebody, or maybe even the White House or the Congress or whoever they're saying they will consult, can OPEC's sway over global energy prices really be curtailed? And how can that happen?
The short and simple answer to that is no.
Right.
I mean, you can, of course, if let's visualize a 20-year scenario where there is a huge shift to renewables across the world, including in India. At that point in time, obviously, the sway of an organization like OPEC Plus is going to be that much less. But at this point in time, what you've just described is not something that is possible.
All right. You talked about Putin, and really, this is my last question to you. This is obviously a big win for Vladimir Putin, who is right now a global pariah, and everybody is saying, no, we're not going to buy Russian oil. But how does this move by OPEC Plus benefit Putin and Russia in the short and medium term, in your opinion?
I think I've already said it. It is a significant victory for Putin, significant loss of face for the US.
Yeah.
And oil is the key source of revenue for Russia at this point in time. The prices are firming up. Russia will continue to sell oil. There will be countries that continue to buy oil, even as there is talk of an embargo and a price cap and everything else. You will have to see how effective these things can be. But at the end of the day, I think across the world, any country is going to worry more about its energy security first, and then worry about larger geopolitical concerns like the Ukraine war.
The
And that's
Indian
exactly what
Foreign
you're going to
Minister.
see happen.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
The Indian,
it's been India's position all along. This is exactly
right.
what India has been saying all along. You're right.
All along. Yes, the Indian Foreign Minister has already made it amply clear that we are not going to give in to global pressures on this one, and we are going to keep our national interest or our self interest first. But I think that sort of sums up this conversation. I think we've covered every aspect why this move by the OPEC Plus is
Yeah,
important, why it can pose a problem.
I just want to
Yes,
add
yes,
one thing.
yes,
I just
Sukumar.
want to add one thing. You
Yeah,
must understand that our position on Ukraine is also extremely nuanced. We do want the war to end, right? I mean, India's position is that Russia should end the war, and which is exactly what the Prime Minister has said, which is exactly what India has said at various fora. But
right.
I think it's equally important to what India has sought to do is to delink the issue of oil and energy from this issue,
Absolutely.
which Western Europe and the US says is not possible. But I think a lot of countries, especially countries in the global south, really have no other option. So it is a nuanced position that India has taken.
Right. Thank you so much for all that analysis, Sukumar, and for making our viewers understand this situation, and also that at least for in the near future, it's not going to be passed on to you. This problem is obviously being dealt at a much larger level and at the government level. But keep watching us. Stay tuned to Hindustan Times. We will keep coming back to you with more updates as and when they happen. Thank you, Sukumar. Thank you, viewers, for watching this broadcast.